All right, y'all. Today is extra juicy. We're going to be talking about empathy versus enabling how to be an effective coach. I talk about some things I haven't talked about before, especially if you're already coaching or you want to be, knowing the difference between empathy and signs you might be enabling behaviors right now is so important to know how to differentiate between the two. So with no further ado, let's check out today's episode. Roll the intro.
Whether you're a life coach, therapist, biohacker, invested in wellness, or in the healthcare profession, if you have an intention to work in psychedelic spaces, you're in the right place then. If you're called, get involved. But first, get informed. Let's talk the 4 N's: intake, intention, in-space integration. Leading to deeper transformations. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, Todd Kole. Walk you through the process, it's all possible. Leave space for the follow through. Most importantly, integration is not optional.
Hey y'all, welcome back. This is Kole with the Psychedelic Coach Podcast, and today I'm going to be talking about empathy versus enabling. So empathy versus enabling and what it is to be an effective coach. And this is something that was pretty tricky for me to learn the difference, actually. There was a almost overcompensation from growing up and hearing a lot of times that I was selfish, I didn't consider other people's feelings, that I swung the pendulum the other direction and almost became hyper empathetic in making sure that I was actively listening. And yeah, I could imagine, I hear that, but it went almost too far. And I didn't really start to understand what enabling was until my first marriage. And now that's not what today's episode is about, but because of that divorce, because of a lot of what that kicked up as far as soul searching, I started to really look at what is empathy and support versus enabling. And then that allowed, as I went through my maturation process as a person, as I developed into a coach, a personal trainer, some of the paths that got me to where I am today, knowing the difference between empathy and enabling is really important, and I would say key in a coaching context, really in any context, but because we specifically are talking about training coaches, a lot of you listening are coaches of some kind or facilitators. I like to start by first defining empathy versus enabling. So empathy is, to me, being able to understand or be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, to at least consider their perspective, even if you can't fully understand it, and have some understanding of their emotions. It's about creating a safe and supportive environment for them to explore their own thoughts and behaviors, and you being able to hold space for that. And you might understand and share the feelings that they have, but when you're enabling behaviors, there is an encouragement to continue to engage in it. And so what I noticed, for example, in my first marriage was there was some behaviors that were happening that it wasn't like I was saying, oh yeah, keep doing that. But it was the not saying thing, not drawing boundaries, trying to be understanding and empathetic that was actually causing me to enable some of the behaviors and some of the things that were happening as a result. So in a coaching context, when you're empathetic, that's a beautiful thing, but you have to be mindful because you can enable or someone's behavior. So let's say that you're making excuses for their behavior because of childhood experiences or traumas. It's one thing to acknowledge feelings and experiences. It's another to make excuses and not supporting taking responsibility. Enabling can also be when someone doesn't have the money to pay and you continue to push back the financial contract that they signed with you. That is enabling agreements or their lack of respecting or honoring the agreements that they make. So even providing like financial support in that way can enable their actions to continue. That's why for us, having contracts are important because it's a mutual consent for the terms of engagement. And when you keep saying, oh, it's because of this and they were going through that. It's one to empathize with someone, and it's not saying don't meet them where they are or make certain accommodations at times. It's paying attention because it can turn into you enabling the behavior, which then makes you not really a coach. And so for me, empathy is when you are actively listening, you're attentive, you're not being judgmental. When we're doing a state assessment, that's really what we're doing is we're looking at the situation, we're looking at their thoughts about their situation, we're looking at what they're doing or not doing, we're looking where they are in the triangle, the oppression trap triangle, victim, villain, or victor. We're looking at the overarching emotion, and then we're creating a list of strategies they're currently using that is putting them or keeping them stuck in the current state. And as I sit and observe and hold space for someone's feelings and experiences, I will validate the emotion and honor if something sounded like, yeah, I can see that was really challenging for you. And I can provide support, and I can give that container for them to observe and work through their own situation. But it's being mindful not to cover up or bail them out of their own emotions, or if they keep ending up in the same place and you're not encouraging them or coming up with a plan for them to take some level of radical responsibility for their actions, or you're the one that's making sacrifices to protect them. Oh, they don't have money. Oh, they didn't show up for the call. Oh, whatever. You are actually enabling behavior. And this is something that I watch coaches fall prey to all the time, and facilitators as well, where, oh, this is because their mom left them when they were 5 and all of that. It may be accurate, and this is where you as a coach, you have to learn how to communicate to a person what the consequence in sequence is going to be if they don't show up for their commitments, because that's life, y'all. That is life. And if they're not able to show up, then you're actually taking their money. Because I watch these shame spirals play out over and over again in facilitation or coaching practices, where the coach or facilitator will say, look, I know because of what they've been through, or they put a deposit and then they don't show up last minute, or they paid the money, now they're asking for it back last minute. And then, or we'll say the facilitator or coach or retreat leader will let the person come on the retreat and say, just pay me when you can. And the person doesn't. Why? Because you are enabling behavior that's already been there a good chunk of the time, not always. But I have to tell you, as many times as I've made financial exceptions, or someone said, I will pay you, just give me time, and they never did, it would be like 9 out of 10 times. They never paid a dime beyond it. And I had to start really coming to Jesus moments of, was I really being empathetic, or was I enabling behavior when I watched them invest in something else because I did not draw a boundary, or I did not come up with a clear level of communication of what to anticipate and what to expect in working with me. Because here's the thing. As a coach, as you grow as a facilitator, you start making other contracts with other people within the work. So if I'm going to do a retreat somewhere, I have to pay no matter what. I have signed a contract for that. And when someone cancels last minute, I don't get out of that last minute. And so then we had to put into place no refund policies, because it started happening enough where it was the person's poor planning or lack of financial planning, or lots of different reasons that they would sign up to come on a retreat and then not make their flight, or something would happen, or they didn't book their flight yet. Now they don't have the money for the flight. And it's such a fascinating place to be in, because on one hand, it's something I really struggled with for a long time, wanting to be empathetic to people's circumstances. But then what was actually happening is we were unable to contribute and give all of the free resources to ensure we maintain the accessibility with a lot of our teachings and offers and whatever that do cost money to create. We put out a lot of free stuff. It's not free to make. And so every time I enabled someone to go through with a similar pattern of not paying or they'll say, I'll pay you later, and they don't. And it's not that they don't have the intention to. It's that I am enabling the behavior versus being empathetic to their situation while still having a boundary. Because look, empathy is an important social and emotional skill for sure. It is necessary for you to build relationships. It is necessary to have that level of compassion and understanding. You're more able to provide effective support. You're more likely to help someone get to where they want to go. And so you can't be a great coach and not have some level of empathy for, at least in what I do, we'll say that the style of coaching that we teach, that we offer, that we are. And really being mindful of enabling behaviors is important because it can prevent the person from getting the help and support they actually need versus coming to you over and over again with the same problems just to drain you, stress you out, overwhelm you, and put you into financial situations that is going to impact who you serve, how you serve, and your ability to even do so at all. What can you do when you start to recognize enabling is taking place? Is that something you've even considered in any kind of way? Like, really think about it. What can you do when you recognize someone is And so what can you do when you recognize you might be enabling a person's behavior? And maybe it started as empathetic and now you're seeing this pattern, and now there's probably going to have to be something done differently. This is where it comes to, you've got to put the rubber to the road. This is where we go back to the 3 Ps. Pause and pull back from the situation. Take a physical scan in your body. Look at this bird's eye view of your relationship since this person came into your life. What are the patterns? What are the trends? And it's like really look, and is there any behaviors that keep cycling back into place? The first kind of key step is you have to acknowledge that you are enabling in some kind of way. And then it's important for you to be honest with yourself about that, even if it wasn't your initial intention. You can't just sweep it under the rug, because if you avoid it and you don't speak to it and you don't say anything, I will tell you that later on down the road, they will come back and either do a chargeback or say you didn't do your job or say you were ineffective or whatever, because again, that's a whole other podcast episode. And what do you even do if you recognize that you are enabling someone? My first number one key thing, and you have to be pretty consistent with this as a practice, is the 3 Ps. Pause, pull back, and take a physical scan. You have got to pause in certain coaching. Really, throughout life, this is a really valuable practice. But in a coaching container, there are times you've got to pause and look at the relationship. It might have started as an empathetic situation, empathetic coaching, very supportive, and now you're starting to recognize the behavior. So step 1 is you have to even acknowledge and see that there is a pattern that is happening here. And it's not easy, and it's also not an easy conversation to have, but you have to be honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself, then you're not able to be honest with the client and the impact of the relationship and what's transpired and what you're seeing. You as a coach, I pay people to bring me a level of responsibility and help me see some of these patterns I might not be able to see. And so if you don't say something, who will? And just sweeping it under the rug or just ending the contract is not really honest from my belief. And we're always in a constant state of growth when it comes, at least I can speak for myself, and Todd too, he does express it. I'm always looking to increase my honesty and find new ways to communicate more effectively. I believe that it is the communicator's responsibility to ensure the person that they're communicating to can understand it, or that there's some level of understanding. And then once I get to that point, once I first get honest with myself, Then I get honest with the other person or the client that I'm working with and some of the impact of their behavior, and really letting them know, hey, when you don't show up for your payment, it's not just I don't have a bunch of money to just ride on. I've got a team I'm paying. We allocate our funds for the month based on the contracts that are committed coming in. And so when you don't pay me on time, I don't get to pay my people on time, which I do, but then I go without. And if you're okay with me going without, then we are not in a very empathetic, mutual container of experience. And so when people push out payments, when people say, oh, could I do that later? And you allow them to do so, you're actually taking the hit yourself. You are becoming the sacrificial lamb, you and anyone else you pay, and the other commitments you've made to have an ecosystem within your structures and within your environment. And that's not functional, y'all. It's not. If someone's not in a position to invest in you, then please talk them out of working with you. That is the best thing that you can do for yourself and for your business. I talk more people out of working with me than I do talking into work with me. And I've become exponentially more that way now. I'm not even the same person that I was 2 years ago. Now, if I feel any hesitancy in someone's desire to come and work with me, I talk them out of it. Because what I usually see is when someone's not all in, there is some type of behavior underneath, and that's not the work that I want to do as a coach right now in the world. There are other people that do. Please, by all means. I don't have the patience for it like I used to, because I'm looking for people who are actually done and ready to make big moves and strategize, and they've done that work already. To take ownership, to take radical responsibility. I have to pay the contracts I've signed. And so I really only want to work with people that have done that work on themselves and understand that when you don't pay, then you're taking food out of somebody else's mouth. And if you make poor decisions because you didn't actually walk through it correctly, that is your shit. Stop putting it on other people or enabling your clients to do that. Now, is there extenuating circumstances? 100%. Absolutely. Do I meet those and hold space for those and make exceptions? Sure. It's remembering that you are responsible to set boundaries. And it's important to set very clear boundaries and communicate them to the people you're working with and the people in your life. So you've got to let them know what behaviors are acceptable and not acceptable in your container. And if they don't do that, what is the consequence? Consequence, not punishment. What is the consequence if they continue or fail to do something? That is life, my friends. If I don't have water, there is a consequence. If I have too much water, there is a consequence. If I go out in the sun, there is a consequence. If I go out in the rain, there's a consequence. It is a consequence. It is a sequence of events if you continue with a behavior. You can remove whether it's bad, wrong, broken, too much, not enough, as far as it relates to boundary setting and harmful behavior. But I really look at it merely as the more clearly you can define for someone, like, here are the behaviors and things of where I operate from and what I expect. A lot of times coaches are afraid to clearly communicate their expectations. Now, for me, I don't typically use the word expectation, but I will say, this is what I need from you. I need radical honesty. I need to know what's going on. If you didn't do the work for the week, or you're not doing your Condor approach workbook, then there's nothing for me to get on the phone with you, because I need data. And without the data, then I'm just getting on and talking you through in this moment. That's not the coach that I am. Like I said, I can refer you to 50 other coaches that will gladly take your money and get on the phone with you and enable your behavior and pacify when you're feeling bad about yourself or whatever. And that is a powerful process to be in. That is just not where I am currently in my iteration as a coach. I'm in the strategy. What are we building? What are we creating? Now what? That sucked. Now what? As Dr. Nita Bouchon says in her book, right? And I have to really stress that you must encourage radical responsibility. That's what the Condor approach does. That's part of why I created the iteration as it is right now, it encourages your clients to take responsibility for their actions and to see, where am I on a daily basis? What am I participating in that may or may not be functional? What are some things that I'm continuing to do or not do that are getting me to where I want to be or where I don't want to be? It's really helping them identify the root cause of their behaviors. It puts some level of ability to get support because it helps them clarify some of the things going on so that they know when they come on a call with you or with community, what guidance might be supportive and what could help them overcome any stuckness or desires or growth opportunities or celebrations for that matter. I found that when I would get on the phone with a client and they didn't do the Condor approach workbook, then we would end up talking about that day, whatever mood they were in was the lens we viewed their entire week of experience. If they had a bad day today, then the whole week sucked. The whole week was hard. Here's everything that was wrong this week. When we get on the phone, if they're in a good place, if they're in positive emotions for them, then it wasn't that bad and it was pretty good and it was even great and it was even potentially amazing. And so having the Condor approach as a workbook, as a tool, as a coach, for me, is one of the most important things I ever put into place. Not only did it help me recognize the behavior and set boundaries and encourage radical self-responsibility, it helped me in recognizing some more stuff going on with them. It's really important for you to have a clearer idea of what the person is going through that you're supporting, because people they delete and distort information. And if they're looking for significance and love, and through their life historically they've been getting it from having traumatic or dramatic circumstances, then they're going to come with that same energy to you, consciously or unconsciously, seeking that same love and significance through the trauma and the drama. It's not easy to first recognize, and even if you initially recognize it, can you be that honest with the client or with the friend or with the person that you're seeing this pattern playing out? And what do they want to know about it? Do they even care? Do they want any support in finding a different way to do things? For me, I only want to work with people who are really looking to step into that radical self-responsibility and that self-honesty and go after these goals that they have to lead healthier, happier lives that are contribution-driven. And that at times is going to require taking some level of action to stop that cycle of also going and getting people to enable their behavior. This is the key to becoming a more effective coach. And this is where, when we say the Condor approach, when we talk about being a Condor or a Condor coach, we're talking truly about embodying the qualities of the Condor, the power, the freedom, the flexibility, the flow, the endurance, also being grounded and connected, a messenger of heaven to earth. And it requires you to be courageous. It requires you to be willing to step out of your own comfort zone and be honest with someone while providing them with support and guidance and accountability, because that's the only way that they can make the meaningful change in their lives that they're looking for. So for us, a Condor coach must be committed to their growth and transformation of their individual self while maintaining healthy boundaries and not supporting behaviors that could actually be perpetuating harm to the client if you continue to participate in it. Being a Condor coach is really embodying all aspects of the Condor. It's really about that radical self-responsibility and sovereignty, and that means you have to be so committed to yourself and the client's growth that you create healthy boundaries while providing them with support. And if someone isn't able to meet you there, the sooner you can see those types of behaviors, whether they're conscious of it or not, because quite often they're not conscious of it, if you keep ignoring the impact of their behavior on your own coaching container, in your retreats, that you're making sacrifices or people around them are making sacrifices to protect them in some kind of way, or bailing them out of trouble repeatedly by pushing back their payments, you're not doing anyone any favors. And so this is a big reason why we teach the intake process the way that we do, because you can find a lot of that out in the intake process. And it doesn't mean don't bring someone on as a client. It changes the conversations that you have. We call it a what happens when. So what happens if you've had this behavior in the past? What happens in our dynamic if that comes up? Because people, I believe everyone gets a second, third, fourth, fifth chance. I do. And you may not be the coach for them right now. Radical honesty for me with myself is what I'm willing to tolerate in my own containers and what I'm not. And for me, I will not make an excuse for someone's behavior. I can understand and empathize with it and still have consequence of it. I've had people come to a retreat that it required after that for me to say, it's not going to be possible for you to attend another retreat at this time, because this person's behavior is destructive to the other participants and people in the container. And I'm not willing to tolerate that. It doesn't mean get rid of them completely or expel them out into the woods or anything like that. But if you don't get clear in what the terms of engagement are in your coaching container, whether it's one-on-one or in groups, and then clearly define it. If you didn't clearly define it and you think someone did wrong, that's your problem. That is your responsibility as a coach to clearly define so that people understand what they're participating in. And if you don't clearly define it, you have failed to provide a clear kind of screenshot, bird's eye view of how someone participates in a container with you. And so when you can work from that place, when you can clearly define it for someone and you see some of those concerning behaviors that could potentially be a problem in a retreat or in a group coaching session, then it's for you to actively listen to them without judgment, reflect back what you're hearing from them, acknowledge what they're experiencing and have your genuine concern for what they're going through. Keep asking open-ended questions, help them explore their feelings and their thoughts while also expressing any concerns you have of past behaviors. Would you consider having on your form, have you ever failed to pay a coach in the past? Or have you ever not made all the payments? Before I make a payment plan with you, have you ever not stayed with an agreement you made with someone in the past, and why? They didn't come through, they didn't do what they said they would do. Okay, say more. Because you have to be discerning as a coach, otherwise you're taking people on for money. I want you to hear that again. If you don't clearly define it and ask these kinds of questions, then you are taking someone on for the money. Because if you're not discerning and just saying yes without understanding the ramifications, then it is a level of fawning, people-pleasing, or financial gain. And it could be something else too. That's just what comes off the top of my head there for a second. Whether it's fear, criticism, safety concerns, things are coming up in a session, it is your responsibility to have that conversation. And if you don't have that conversation, don't be surprised on the other side if they do a chargeback or start to talk badly about you and all that. And if someone does do a chargeback, you've got to have contracts to show what the agreements were. Did you follow through? And maybe you didn't. And maybe you're not even sure what you want your contracts to be, but I promise you, if you don't define it in some kind of way, it's going to come back and bite you, and it's going to somehow enable their behavior of finding a villain, because if they're looking for a hero and you say yes, if they don't get what they want, then they're going to call you the villain. And so you are, in fact, enabling their relentless search for a villain. And I am not willing to participate in that anymore. Once I recognized the behavior, then I set clear boundaries for myself. Then I took radical self-responsibility. That helped how I define self-responsibility with the people I work with. And that was game-changing for me. So recognize the behavior, set boundaries, encourage radical self-responsibility for yourself so that you can encourage the people that you work with to take responsibility for their own actions as well. And yes, help them identify what the cause might be, where it's coming from, provide support, all of that. But at the end of the day, it is up to you, dear friends, to really get honest with yourself on if you're enabling, or if you're being empathetic, or if it's functional. This is the key to being an effective coach. So that's today's episode. I love you. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, share this with a friend. I'm going to be coming with more coach techniques. Ta and I are also going to do a podcast episode on our story. How did we get here as Ta and Kole? Or taco. I like to say taco because who doesn't love tacos, right? Until next time, be easy, be free. Integration is not optional, but how you integrate is. Now is the time, my friend, if you have not really stepped in to define what is empathy to you? What's enabling to you? If you're working with clients right now, where might that be showing up? And then from there, what are you going to do about it? Until next time, be easy, be free, and as you already know,
integration is not optional.